Thank you for being on my show today. I'd like to invite you because one of the greatest things I actually admire from other individuals like yourself is that the ability to have an experience, and not only have an experience, but to connect with individuals that allow us to show the various forms of light through the faceted of the uniqueness that we get to connect and experience. And someone like yourself, I wanted to invite on to have a discussion with because your unique position, not only with your interest in astrology, but the way that you actually connect with individuals, not only to focus on the potential of consciousness, the potential of spirituality, the potential of all that nature embodies within us and without us. I think all of it comes together to put us in unique positions to curate, to translate, and also form the vehicles for light to come into being. And I think one of the greatest positions that you get to actually have is you get to discuss with so many individuals that have a unique story. They're all their own little creators, bringing their light to the world. And your show, In the Light, brings this focus to enshrine and honor it in a way that it's like a tribute, but at the same time, too, it's a long learning journey, I should say, because the way that we all encompass universe is always to learn, to grow, to become more of ourselves while getting closer to who we are. And I think each of us always have something to learn. So today, I'd like to take some time and discuss with you, Ana Isabel, about your experience so that you may tell your story, what it's like to be in your position, as well as ask a couple questions that may personally allow me to grow individually, to understand better the role and position of how universe brings everything to provide and guide into this moment presently so that we can utilize our nature to cultivate even more and caretake more nature to inspire others to do so within themselves and ultimately expressing it outward. So I'd like to have you provide an introduction, your history, what you're drawn to. I'd like to dive into more specific questions as we get into it, but I'd like to welcome you to the floor so that you may have a moment to introduce yourself properly from the nature you are.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for inviting me on here. I'm very used to talking to people about themselves. It's a little bit unusual to be talking about me.
It happens.
So it's a very unusual experience. You're talking about experiences. I am a psychological astrologer, although I have a very strong interest in traditional astrology, which encompasses horary and medical astrology. I am an analytical hypnotherapist as well. And so I combine my knowledge of astrology and my knowledge of, I guess, psychology to be a healer for people. And I think a healer is a good word. We always think about healing as being something that herbalists might do, or specifically people think about healing in terms of energy healing, Reiki, etc. But healing comes in many different ways, and this is about helping people to understand themselves better. And it's a bizarre statement because we all think we know who we are, and we all think we understand who we are, until life does something that throws us and makes us question. And so any astrologer will recognize that, because that's when people come to see them. Any therapist will recognize that, because that's when people come to see them. So for me, that's my starting point, is the desire to help others, because you know what? The world is incredibly beautiful, and life could be sublimely joyous, and it can also be excruciatingly painful. And it's painful to me to witness the pain of others and not be able to do something. So from the longest time, I always wanted to step in, of course, as a therapist, I don't want to fix. It's not about fixing.
Mm-hmm.
but it's about helping people reflect. And that's what astrology is all about, is helping people to reflect so that they are able to find the power within them and live with integrity, which means having a better sense of who they are. Because so much of the crisis that we experience throughout life is about conflict between expectations and reality. So you can have that conflict manifest in a number of different ways. You can have a conflict between the expectation that society has of you and what you feel in your heart being very different. So, for example, I mean, the obvious one is astrology. We are taught that this is superstitious nonsense, and we are expected to be following the rational reductionist scientific route as our way of seeing reality. So I think a huge number of people, I do love your cat, for a huge number of people, they know instinctively and in their hearts that there's more to life than that. But they might be afraid to explore it. And then there is a sizable number who say, do you know what? I am at odds with that particular view of reality. And I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to follow my interest, thank you very much. And stuff that, And so that's one type of conflict. What we are being told is the reality and what we feel. But there are other types of conflict to do with expectation. The expectation that this is how you live life. You are going to do really well in school, and then you're going to go to university and get a really high-paying job because then you can afford to live. And for a lot of people, that just doesn't work because they're not that way inclined. So they're trying really hard to fit, to play that part, and it's not for them. They have other ways of living that they need to explore. So that's another type of conflict. But the biggest conflict comes from within ourselves, where we're trying to meet those expectations so much that we don't realize that that's not who we are. And so we are coercing ourselves into being something that we're not. So that's what astrology is good for. And that's what my work as a hypnotherapist is also about, is turning that mirror so that we can see ourselves more clearly, understand the nature of the conflict that's causing us so much pain, and then helping us to think, okay, is there another way? What is that other way? Let's think creatively. So for me, that's deep healing. That's real healing. And the more of us do that, the more we are living with integrity, which means we are whole rather than split into different people we're trying to be. And I think that's a really important aspect of what it is to be a healer, is to bring that peace that we need to have inside of us. And there are moments in life when we are challenged to take a stand and say, oh, what am I going to do? Bury my head and pretend this isn't happening? Or am I going to actually do something? And those are the moments where we head for the astrologer's consultation room or the therapist because we need some help.
And that's beautifully said, because when you pursue psychology, we understand the mind, the concept, the unraveling, the nature of human, the nature of how we become to be. and even the attachments we have from the experiences that built us. I think a lot of that comes into place because we offer the ability to explore it because it's so complex, but it's simple like nature. It allows itself to come into being, but at the same time too, nature is self-healing. We come together. Even the essence of psychology as a therapeutic exploration for us to rediscover ourselves, to heal parts of ourselves, brings so much attention to where we should focus because many of us are so accustomed to those constructs. Even like you said, those who pursue higher knowledge have a construct based off an expectation. The way of the expectations of how we express ourselves based off how you can say, hold our skeleton up to show up on stage. We provide our ability, our vehicle to extend into these roles, but they don't identify what the heart speaks. They don't identify what comes from when we're just in our flow, in our comfort. Even when you're in your own home, you can feel the ease of when you're more uptight trying to stead into the movement. When you're in your own home and comfort, you can release and feel the comfort. You feel that feminine. You're part of universe too. And it's not always to be on your shoulders to have an expectation, but to show up with universe side by side. You co-create the journey. And when we bring forth healing, we're more there to be there for not only ourselves, but through ourselves for others. So the best thing we can do to change the world for the best would be to find ourselves so that we would better deliver who we are by our nature. We shouldn't conform it to a restriction or an expectation. I think a lot of it comes to we show up at the right place at the right time. Even as corny as that could be, it gives us the avenues that universe itself is self-healing. Even if we trip or fall, we get back up, we continue, we heal over time. We connect to those that gives us the expression that we may have not connected before. And I think that's so unique in all of our natures. So in your experience with all the individuals that you've come across, all the explorations, even your idea of astrology right now, the way we connect, I believe yesterday was Mars pretty much touching base with Chiron in terms of their song expressing to the world. Bringing action to healing is more now than ever trying to awake itself. We've got a motivation, a passion, not only to heal, but to quicken the healing, to bring it more action, to bring in more energy. And when we bring our nature together, nature meets with one another to co-create. So when we're connecting to individuals, like even in this moment here on the meta-symbolic level, we are enacting universe to heal through us. We bring in the light. And with your show In the Light, you not only encompass what it's like for the individuals in their own light to bring it to be, you highlight that section, you highlight their uniqueness. And that's what psychology opens up for astrology to welcome you into. So you can understand the depth, the function, the way in which we can connect and understand, even if you don't fully see the intricacy of each woven form of light, each angle or each facet. I think we all come together to express it so uniquely that you'd be surprised how much is so much contained, but at the same time is gently expressed like a brush of a stroke, easily bringing a canvas onto itself layer by layer until an image forms that we look back on and we're just surprised. Wow, we were able to utilize our own light to create this work of art. Even it's not just the artist, it's the art itself living on to continue its work. And even for your shows, the way you deliver messages through synchronicity, through the way that you connect through your feminine connection, the idea of connecting to people, the desire to heal, you bring all this into a function that is like a natural rhythm and the dance, the groove that you allow yourself to, it's not even operating. It's like knowing how to breathe. You don't have to know to breathe, you just do. But the know of the fact is the faith you have to trust your own nature, to trust the way that you are so that you dance with universe together. So ultimately going into question form, how does connecting individuals to you help bring you closer to connecting to the universal one through all the light explorations that you are encompassing through the journey of your verbal and visual expressions, even the time you take to explore their works. I like to ask someone who has gone so much along the journey, what benefits and beauties have you explored along that path?
Wow. That's a very interesting question. I think it's a difficult question because I don't know how to be anything other than
Yes, yeah.
And so I can only, I guess, answer your question from the perspective of intention and desire. And then perhaps talk about what it's meant to me so far. So the intention is to explore and to explore and bring and allow others to explore too. So the world became very dark 4 years ago, and it's not showing much sign of getting any lighter on the surface. And I started 3 years ago to do 3 podcasts. In fact, I have 3 channels. One of them is In the Light, Growing Your Soul, which was to help bring forward voices that spoke of healing, things that are of light, hope, because it was my intention to at least help people see that there are other possibilities of seeing the world. The other one was Lightways, which explores astrology with other astrologers. And that, the intention there, was very similar. And it's also because there's nothing better as an astrologer than to have a really good conversation with other astrologers.
Oh, yes, without a doubt.
And be able to share. It's like we're comparing notes, and that's absolutely brilliant. And the third one is called Pet Talk with Anna and Teddy, Teddy being my dog.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In which I interview the most amazing behaviorists who are not just about training a dog or training any animal. It's very dog-based because it seems that most of the behaviorists I come across specialize in working with dogs. But the idea is to help people understand animals better and improve their relationship with animals. That is my intention. And it is my ode to the animal kingdom, a feeling of gratitude that I have for all that they give us in every respect, which deepens with every passing moment, it seems, for me. So I wanted to do something to help them be better understood in the world. So that was the intention of the 3. And it was all bound up with helping people to see light amidst darkness. So that was number 1, the intention. And the hope, I guess, on a personal level, was that I would get the chance to grow and learn through doing this. And in fact, that's what I feel has happened, because the amount of reading that I do is pretty amazing when you consider that most of my guests particularly on my In the Light channel, have written books, and I read every one of them. So it takes me to new, it deepens what I already know, but it also expands what I know and makes it so that my perspective of the world is certainly very different to what it was 3 years ago. And that's the joy. I have always been infinitely curious, and have always really wanted to understand more about the nature of our world. And nobody will claim to know that completely and utterly. But at least it's satisfying my desire to explore. And that's what it's doing. And hopefully it inspires everyone who watches to think and question and wonder. And that's perfect. That's what we're about.
I totally agree. And you've hit so many points while you're expressing all that, because like your 3 avenues, for example, the way you find the light, you showcase the uniqueness of each individual's natures and their potential to be. Not only do you have the exploration to dive into the work itself, but you commit yourself to have that curiosity and then to bring forth, to highlight and curate the potential for others to witness the light and potential to bring inspiration, and then to extend it to astrology, which you can spend a whole life going into the depth, advancing yourself to understand how it all functions and works. And you're always learning, you're always applying, and you're always seeing it in real time, embodying the lessons, understanding through the process, the same way we understand psychology. It's this period of experimentation with the knowledge until it's fully embedded to recognize the patterns, how we connect to it, and even through how we connect through our animals and such. That's connecting through the heart space. That's the empathic way in which we build the bonds where we can have communication without the language, which is one of the most strongest emotional ways that we not only connect with one another, but we connect with nature, universe. We speak to this light in the same way. So those bonds we have with animals are more stronger to us than those who are lost within themselves. And it's because when we look at their animals, we see this bond, we see this uniqueness, we see this light that comes from them unconditionally. They're not lost and plagued by language or distraction. They come back into who they truly are. And I think that's why they teach us so many lessons, and at the same time too, compassion and love that we both embody. And I think it's a two-way street how we can connect in those ways, because when we provide love to those we love, they become more embodied to feel that love. In turn, the way that they give back amplifies it. It's a crystal itself. It's not just doubling it. You're allowing it to become more of the field, more of the presence. And through the time, the way we emit through the heart, we are always continuing to embody in memory this connection, this feeling that keeps us stronger. And it also stays with them. So the experience strengthens the bonds. And I think that's the way you do when you connect to the mind, when you connect to the light. You're giving yourself these different encompassings of, you can even say a trinity that comes together. At first, I would see your 2 shows, the main ones of astrology and In the Light. You say yourself, the way that people can go to college, yet these 4 years that you've had has brought you more learning, more education, more experience, and more talking to the individuals who did the work, did the lessons to bring themselves to a presentation that they were willing to bring their worlds, their words, all of it to be presented, to be together, to be conceptualized and processed. And even on the psychological analysis of it all, when we look at psychology, we want to understand those we connect to better connect to them, through them, and bring them back to who they are. We don't want anyone to be plagued. I think it's always bring healing that we pursue the passions we have. And sometimes our actions are to do some for others, but is that healing the world itself through the action? And sometimes we make mistakes, which is great for lessons to learn from. But those that can heal us and bring us together in those 4 years, one can go to an education that's structured through the conditioning that may have limited their processing and expectation. But for you to explore the natural, the feminine, the exploration of curiosity, even in Gemini essence, that we can see what the world has to offer, communicate, and through that communication, build the bridges through the words itself that universe is bringing us whole again. And I think you get to be in one of those positions that is so unique because you come to this world for your expression, for you to express into the world. And 4 years ago, being called to seek the light, highlight the light, curate the light, and connect us to understand both the light itself and the light within, that they speak the same language. You pursue the same type of function through nature, but you pursue it through the feminine, the masculine, and then at the most of all, the spirit that pulls in both this electric and magnetic force to harmonize together so that we can continuously have this dance, have this cycle. And the way that we find the words to construct it, it's almost its own art form because we can honor and look at the astrology of a chart. And I'm just always curious to charts in general. That's the one thing with astrology that we are always drawn to be like, oh, we just are curious just to know. And I think that's one of the great things that we take for granted with astrology is that it gives us more like an insight to angles and collections of giving us a wave that we rode in on, the song that we're trying to jazz together. And when we perceive that at the chart level, we can apply that we come together to arrive at this knowledge at a practical sense to not only electrically analyze this feminine process, but to see it arise so naturally. It's knowing you planted a seed, but that flower could be so unique in its structure. But we honor that flower. We want to speak the language of the flower. So we look at the light to see how does it express? How does it come out? And how does it give us the ability to let ourselves be? Let that light be in its most unconditional way, much like the way that the animals can teach us. So I hope that like interwoven your whole process together. And I don't really have a question per to say, but what is your reflection based off maybe the inspiration that has come through many of the expressions I've brought into motion currently, or anything that you can reflect off of in this particular light shining out?
It made me smile when you were talking about, as an astrologer, we're always curious about a chart. And it always tickles me the minute, if you're, let's say, giving a talk for the Astrological Lodge of London, and the minute you put a chart up, you have everybody's attention. If minds were wandering before, you put the chart up and it's like, oh, let's have a look at that. And it's true because a chart tells us so much, and it's the heart of the matter. It's the heart of the person. It's the heart of the enterprise. It's the heart of whatever it is that chart is representing. And yesterday I was teaching, and it's a beginner's class, and I was talking to them about. I was answering a question that one of the students had asked, and I can't remember. One of them was talking about how she reads cards. And she was talking about how when she has a client, because she's a healer, actually, I think she's an energy healer, but she asks people whether they'd like her to use some cards as a point of inspiration. And she often does that at the beginning of the session. And how the cards always reflect what the person is bringing up in the session as it progresses.
Mm-hmm.
And I was explaining to them what a consultation chart is, and how the consultation chart is the moment when we meet with the client and how the chart shows them and us, the astrologer, and the limits of the astrologer to be able to help, or the best route for the astrologer to employ to actually bring healing and therapy. And that's the beauty of the chart, is that, in fact, let's imagine that you are a traditional astrologer and a client comes to you with a question, and I'm next door at the same time, also an astrologer, and a client comes to me also with a question. But we have the same chart. And yet, two different people, two different astrologers, what's going to happen? Are we going to say exactly the same thing? Are we going to see the same thing? Well, obviously, there are going to be themes that are very, very, very similar. But the point is that I and you are very different people, and that our two clients are very different people. So there is a context in which this happens. So the charts may be identical, but there's also a context of experience, because I'm going to see things that you won't, and vice versa. And equally, our clients may be asking similar questions, but from different perspectives, from different angles. And that, to me, is a source of infinite fascination, that I can draw up a chart for this moment, and it might be descriptive of the conversation we're having at this moment in time. But that chart could also potentially answer a question, a specific question that I might have if I'm an horary astrologer. Or it might describe the medical ailment that is bringing somebody to their bed at this very moment in time. So it's, when people talk about astrology being locked in fate and being very prescriptive, I think, for me, the jury's out on the matter of fate. I think there is something there, although I'm not sure exactly how it works. But what I do know is that we play a part in that, whether it's through self-fulfilling prophecies because we feel defeated and therefore we miss the opportunities, or, whatever it is. We do play a part in things, because I can see, I'm looking at a client's chart and I can see Jupiter transits, and they are as strong as you can possibly have them. In fact, you get what I call the flybys, where you just get the one and nothing, it's like a flash in the pan. You get excited for a moment and then the excitement dies down. Nothing much happens on the surface. But you get the three. And when you get the three, there really is an impetus to grow, to be free, to change. And yet, you can occasionally find people who feel the urge to do that and do nothing. So they miss those opportunities. They were there. They came knocking. They saw them. They felt them. They didn't act on them. So is that destiny? What is it? What it is the chart is mirroring the impulse of the individual to grow. It's mirroring the actors who show up to give them the opportunity to grow, but they're not ready. they're not ready. And so they miss it. And I see that. I see that more so with the so-called easier transits than with the hard ones. Because the hard ones are the moments where you really do get hit in the head and somebody wags the finger and says, you will change.
The squares, the Saturns.
It's the Saturns, the Plutos.
Yes.
And yet, the individual still is involved still has a choice. Because we all say that nobody is unchanged by death, for example. And yet we experience grief differently. Almost every medium I have ever interviewed. In fact, no, I think there might be an exception, but just about every medium I have interviewed has chosen to become a medium because they have lost someone they loved. But not everybody who loses someone chooses to become a medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In fact, some will reject the notion of anything spiritual or God because they are so angry over the loss. So the point I'm making is this. Pluto comes along and you are faced with life and death situations, whether it's yours or that of somebody you love. How you react ultimately is down to you. For some, it is an opening of a deep desire to understand more about the nature of existence and to explore at a very deep level what it is to be alive. For others, it will throw them into the bucket list. You know, time's precious. I'm going to die one day. I've got 100 things I need to do.
The masculine.
Others are going to say, nothing happens. Life carries on. Life goes on. You see, and I think you can say, well, that's down to the individual and that is in the chart and it's fated. But again, that is partially true because we always have a choice about how we grow and how we develop and how deeply we're going to engage with ourselves. We always think it's about engaging with others, engaging with the world. But actually, it always begins with engaging with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How do we deal with the pain that's inside? Do we bury it? Deny it? It turns into a physical ailment. We don't want to see the connection. Okay. Or do we say, help? Somebody help me. And then what kind of help?
Mm-hmm.
Because we might decide, right, I just want a pill to kill this, to cure it. I'm going to go and do, any one of the new psychedelics because that I'm told is going to be the thing. And I'm not knocking the pharmaceutical side of things. I think that there is a place. But what I worry about is shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Shortcuts that actually mask rather than heal. And that is where others instinctively want to go. They don't want the shortcuts. In fact, many times they have tried many shortcuts, and it's only damaged them more. So they need the real thing. And that comes down to engaging with ourselves. We have to engage with ourselves. We have to engage with the feelings. And obviously, it's the pain that we all want to avoid. But we have to, because if we don't, everything just gets so much worse.
And it piles up. It's this sense that when you have so much to address, you allow yourself to pursue the concept of a bucket list for those pursuers. They tend to want to understand what they wanted to achieve with the opportunity granted. But as time goes on, that healing is already occurring. Sometimes in the process of healing, you can't always use the function when it's coming together. And with nature, it's not going to happen overnight. You can't find a quick fix. You can't slap it on and knowing that you can just go back out on the field. Sometimes it takes being able to bring in that potential so that you can then work with it better, integrate it better. And I think that happens with the way that we operate through our reality, the way that we honor our nature, the way that we allow ourselves to speak and communicate. And I think trying to take in everything you're saying, I'm very like reading the symbols as somebody who lucid dreams. I know to deconstruct it through my experience that I love analyzing it. But at the same time, too, it's not the key of the analyzation. It's the analyzation of, for example, in my case, I have a Mercury with a Saturn and Uranus and Neptune all dancing together in this sector. And it wants to utilize these energies and these facets to pursue this perspective. But at the same time, too, I look at the polarities. When you have the opposite end of that, you also have this Cancerian energy that wants to expand, this rising sign that brings it all coming together. So there's this feminine aspect, but then there's also this masculine. And then I perceive my perception of, for example, Mars and Venus, how it has this feminine and masculine connection as well, and they're polarized. There's this way of operating both of the field and of the connection to then form them together. And when you get to astrology, we introduce the concept of Leo, the heart. But this heart comes together because we've had the mentality of Gemini. We had the field of Cancer. Now we bring these together to create, to make new, to add something that didn't exist before because you were able to meet two sides, two perspectives that weren't able to first see hand in hand. And even just taking everything you're saying now, everything in the moment can be expressed through, you can say it's divination, you can say it's the way we just look at that moment in time for a universe to speak to us. But it's the way that we choose to connect. We choose to ask that question. We choose to pursue it, just like we can choose to make our path, choose our adventure. Some of us likes to explore. Some of us like to fit that field, but then some of us know that our nature sometimes want to fit that field, or sometimes explores without us knowing we want to explore. The way we honor knowing that we have an attraction, we have something drawn to what we should be doing. How can we get Mars to come with that journey, to find that passion, that motivation, to way to move forward, to bring a wave to reach its destination, not by the way it's sought, but by the wave of motion. And when we have that motion to move, we work with it, we heal with it, because these waters, they're all around us, they're part of us. And even in the water that we are now, we're conducting the energy, the music, the song, the jazz of the current light that we have. Even if you take the concept of the sun, even on a scientific level, transferring its light and taking a moment before it reaches us, there's this journey along the way that we're always receptive right now to what is already being brought to us, but it's also presently providing us the opportunity in that moment to also reach that light. And even if it might not hit instantly, I think a lot of it does come together. Like even now, trying to configure in my head, I follow more of a sidereal point of view, and I label this more of a true star astrology because we can see the sun's angle to a geosolar connection. But when we look at the zodiac field, where the constellation is, and if the sun's amplifying that, even that delay between the light emitting from the sun coming to us. The sun is transferring the light that it's receiving itself. So it's fractal in its nature. So when we see currently right now, Mars and Chiron together, it's currently in Pisces under this sidereal point of view, this where the constellation truly is. And it speaks to us about how the waters of the universe itself is trying to heal. It's trying to communicate to us. It's trying to find the energy, the motivation in this moment. The way that we connect currently with the Taurus energy, this resonance that's speaking to us about the Jupiterian expansion, the way we work with the earth, their functions of ability to work with the solidarity, the way we connect to not only heal the earth, but come back to utilize our nature to enrich the earth and lighten the earth. We bring light through the sun to bring energy, but it's our emotions, it's the way that we conduct ourselves that can open up new avenues, new ways to garden, grow, and bring new seeds to potential. It's through this innovation, this fire, this way that we can conceptualize creativity to connect it all, because it's us that can germinate a seed. It's us that we can create the greenhouse. It's us that we can create the supporting infrastructure to provide not only healing, but growth, potential, and not only just growth and potential for an individual, it itself produces its own fruit. It itself continues to continue on. And I think that's just, it speaks for the energy right now that we as astrologers, even as psychologists, I studied psychology inside when I went to college to pursue it because I wanted an experience and opportunity, but it was of interest. So the reason I got into astrology rooted itself from psychology. And to understand what goes on, we almost understand art. We understand the way it came together, the medium, the canvas, the effort that has come from the human nature to unravel it. And we honor that almost like an appreciation of the nature. And as we get closer to astrology, we come full circle, looking in for the light itself, not as a judgment, but as a wow, that's the way that universe expressed itself. That's the way that universe brought itself to be. And in one way or another, it connects step by step, us coming together, bringing the field whole again. So there's not too much of a question there, but I would like to go grab a cup of tea in a moment. I would also like to ensure that it's 12:41, so I've had you on for about 50 minutes so far. I believe the recording is continuing just under that. So with this moment here, I'd like to take a moment to grab a cup of tea quick. It will take not even 1 minute, and then I will come back and I'd like to continue to maybe wrap up maybe some questions back and forth, how we feel about the energy. I think this is less about an interview, more about the energy expressing itself and us giving the ability to have a vehicle so it can express itself, come together and meet. And I like that more because it's not a discussion to desire. It's a discussion for universe to be honored. It's a nature to see what blossoms. We want to capture that. I love capturing nature. I'm a photographer by instinct. Growing up as a child, my father did it, so he passed it on to me. And capturing light. Capturing light is just honoring the nature. And I think that offers so much because it inspires, it sparks. It's a language without the language. And through the language we connect to, we know that it has its limitations, but it has its beauty. But that without the language speaks without all of this. It's a medium on itself without knowing that it has to function with these tools. Even without the innovation, nature finds a way. And that's beautiful in its own right. So I hope that we were able to come full circle with that in some way or another. So I like to take a moment to go grab a cup of tea, if that's okay. So I got to honor that humanness. So 1 moment, please. And I'd love to get your perspective on all this because I can probably just sit here and express, but I would love to have this moment to be honored for you and your expressions. Maybe I could add to this little perspective by giving like my nature into an expression, but at the end of the day, I want you to be the voice here. I want you to be the one who shines because I think your light is worth admiring too. It's something so unique. It's something that I'd like to point out and say that this here is not only an attractor for us to find a way to reconnect to us, but you open up the opportunity for universe to offer segments of light to exist, for us to know a song that didn't exist before, to reconnect through synchronicity, to offer the symbol. Just like in pulling a card, you create the symbol, you create a potential for us to encounter, to uncover, to discover. And in discovering that without us, we discover that which is within us. So with that, I like to say thank you, first of all, for being. thank you for actually having this moment here. And thank you for being able to even be patient as like I overexpress myself, but honoring my nature, observing my nature is why we have the potential as astrologers, as psychologists, to utilize these studies to know ourselves as well, work with ourselves so that we don't overwork ourselves, but at the same time too, honor and connect and get back to the core of who we are. Because sometimes we lose that, sometimes we escape that. And sometimes, like for me, right in this moment, sometimes it just continues to on and you just catch it in that moment. And like you said, it's that moment. We could make a choice. So I shall make this choice right here. Now to continue on, where were we?
You were talking about the importance of self-expression. And clearly, I would agree with you 100% that this is a very important thing. And I think that brings me to sanctity and freedom. Two words that are extremely important for our time. And two words, one of which must inform the other if we are not to fall into destructive ways of being. And what I mean is this. If we hold that life is sacred and that all life is sacred, then it means that in our efforts to be free to express who we are never going to be destructive of anything willingly. So when we talk about personal freedom, there has to be a caveat. Freedom is, to me, sacred. Because without freedom, there is no self-expression. And we are living in a time in which our freedoms are being challenged. Freedoms that are inherent, that are our birthright. The freedom to express who we are, the freedom to have connections with families, the freedom to be alive, in fact. It's really important. And yet, we are continually getting messages that actually humanity is something evil, that it is destructive. No, some of us. And they tend to have a lot more power than the average person, are very destructive. We have a tremendous capacity for good and evil. And most of us strive really hard to not be destructive. So freedom is really important. But within that, we must remember the sanctity of all life, including human life. So that's important because the minute we hold that in our hearts, then we are never going to be destructive. And we are going to be following natural law, which is do no harm, commit no fraud, and keep the peace. We are then free to grow, explore, and as human beings, we're going to get things wrong from time to time. But your average person isn't going to get things colossally wrong that often. So I guess it was you talking about the need to honor the right to be ourselves. I think that is true on all levels. Observing natural law, do no harm, means not doing harm to ourselves too. Commit no fraud means be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with others either. Keep the peace means be at peace within yourself so that you can be at peace with others. That's really important. If we can do that, then we are observing the sanctity of all, including ourselves. There's no point in the old ideas of the mortification of the body and of seeing everything as shameful that is physical, or ignoring the physical for the spiritual. Because if we're spiritual beings, they happen to be here in a physical world. I think that the creator might be somewhat insulted if we say, well, actually, you know what? So there's quite a lot that has come into our mind from what we said, which is a very simple statement, but a very powerful and true statement about honoring ourselves. It means we also have to honor others, human, animal, plants, our earth itself. And it doesn't mean that the current way in which we live is wrong. People would have us believe that if you jump into a car, you are the work of the devil. Hello? No, actually. No. If you jump into your car, it's because you happen to go somewhere. And actually, the way that people in power have been shaping society for the last century requires us to have this form of transportation, because there are vast differences. So let's look at that. And no, I don't accept that living a virtual life is a virtue. Because it means that I'm going to somehow save the planet, which I am not destroying, by the way. The very people who are wanting to imprison us into 15-minute cities.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
That they are destroying it with geoengineering and everything else that's going on. We happen to just be using the tools that we have available to us to try to live the best lives we can. So no, the hair shirt is not for the average person. Thank you very much. So what I want everyone to understand is that humanity on the whole is good and is a work of goodness. And so let us come back to seeing life as sacred for everything, including humanity. And let us recognize when we're being manipulated and made to feel less than what we are, whether it's by powerful people or the person who is your manager at work, or whether you're in an abusive relationship. Recognize it and say, no thanks. I am more than this. I am more than this. That's what my work is about, is helping people to say, I am more than this. It's giving you back your sovereignty, your ability to say, I can stand for, and I am a beautiful light. So I'm going to allow myself to shine for others. I don't know yet how that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm going to open that door and that possibility to shine.
Yeah.
It's very important, because when we do that, that is how we bring light into the world. So it's not about being in fear, and it's not about being manipulated. It's the opposite, I should say, of being in fear and being manipulated.
Mhm.
It requires some humility. The humility to say, not sure what I'm doing here just now.
Yeah.
But when we have that humility and when we're able to say, okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing here just now, what are we doing? We're asking a question. And the minute we're asking a question, we're opening the door for growth, development, and the ability to shine. So I've kind of gone in a very kind of almost spiral back to what you were saying, but that you asked me what I was thinking about
Using
in terms of what you said, and that's what I was thinking.
Makes a lot of sense. I agree with you 100% on a lot of that. And it actually triggered a memory that last night I came across a book, and while reading it, it opened up to a page that specifically expressed clearly to me how most of those that are wounded and where true dis-ease comes from are rooted through both where we place anger and fear. These emotions, these ways that we use our own energy to invest in something that takes us away from our heart, our center, our space, our soul, that takes us away from this. This is the root of why we're unable to fulfill that area that it welcomes in this energy. And I think when we're working with Earth, the potential to understand that even 4 years ago, let's look at the motivations of the restrictions in place. We can see that there's an attempt based off this domineering body to try to restrict the potential that wants to grow, the potential that wants to explore. Many of us question it when placed in a position that we want to honor and ask ourselves, that we want to know, wait, this is our light. This is our light to shine. This is the ability of why we are here, so that even with restrictions in place, they allow us to communicate, to know where we can let go of, to focus our energy once more into something that will bring us closer to the light. That's true innovation. We can meet all that can hold us back, but like true healing, like a tree growing, it will adapt based off the environment in each moment with the energy it has. It's wise, not for the wisdom that it carries. It's wise for the wisdom it embodies.
In alchemy, the idea is that you refine, and you're separating out the constituents. Do you refine, and then you bring everything back to the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that is our inner work, is to refine. And at times, part of that refining process feels like a tearing apart. And there is a lot of imagery in alchemical books that, is pretty gruesome. It looks like, dismemberment going on.
Really?
But that's the tearing apart in order for the healing to happen and for things to become whole again. So it's the process. It's part of the process is this dismembering that goes on. And that is that notion is there in many a shamanic tradition. It's there in ancient mythology and different cultures. And I feel like maybe collectively we're going through a dismemberment at the moment. And I look forward to the healing that happens. And when we begin that coming back together, renewed in some way. So I think it is a time in which it's almost our duty to do it internally in ourselves so that we can collectively come together and look at the old and say, you know what? That was a lot darker than we realized until we got the wake-up call. And now it's time to heal and do things differently. And I think that that's where we are. It's the opportunity to see, the other image I have is the Herculean task with the Aegean stables, where he has to let the waters run in order to cleanse all the horrible, festering, fetid water that was there, and until it comes clean again. And maybe that's what we're doing. We're going through that process, and we all have to do it internally at some point, even if it's after we die. At some point, there is a reckoning in which we have to go, Anya, did I do a good job of that?
We want to look back and know that our heart was in the right place, but we also showed up for it. I think your message is not only on point for, like, let's say Pluto retrograde right now gives us the reflection so that we can understand the transformation potential that we're willing to reignite once we're able to move this towards us once more. In the way that we revisit Chiron, who was together with the solar eclipse, now Mars passing over it, is showing us the motivations, the passions, to know, like you said, with the story with Hercules, the concept of the water, the collective of the water. We need the collective water that has gone through the natural structuring, the harmony of being together in nature to bring forth, and that which has absorbed to become less clear is now being brought back through the collective itself to find itself, in which case it all comes to the surface for us to address and wash away. It comes together so beautifully because it allows itself to speak for itself through us, but we're observing, we're witnessing, we're participants. And I think the healing and the beauty that we discover along that way opens up more about who we are, just as much as it opens up to potential to what universe truly is to each of us, that unique nature we carry, the unique way we can shine light through us. We're always receptive. Where we picked up, how our ancestries have brought us our bodies to be and work with the memory available through that, you can call it DNA, and even the ability for us to have an experience to shape us through the seasons. The way that we construct ourselves in the light is so on point that it shows us the way so that we can ultimately connect with our inner nature. You can even say our animal instinct, the way that communicates in nature without the need of construct that is of what is, to honor that communication, that feminine connection, because it's there, it's present within all of us. And I think when we have those moments, we know that authenticity is more honest to us. We know that authenticity is speaking to us from the heart. We not only feel it, and even as you say, those that you connect to, the mediums themselves, our choice to connect to, show us that we also already have a part of ourselves, a little medium growing, that we recognize and honor over time. Your experience to connect to all of them show you in a position too, not just through your refinement of study, but through your nature, the way that you had your experience brought forth to honor and recognize abilities, potential, and even explorations that were already present within inside you. The restrictions itself 4 years ago brought forth to enlight a fire, to bring light. So whenever there is darkness, light will always come from us, and it will always be a part of us through us. I think the change that is happening is not one where we need to follow anyone. It is not a direction. It's not a desire. It is the awakening within. And through us, do we bring the innovations, bring the solutions, bring the healing. And I find that so beautiful in the art of nature, because nature will always be. It can speak to us a dozen ways. We can deconstruct the mind. We can deconstruct astrology. The light will always show us what it is, but what is will always be. And we can't argue with that, nor can we fight it, but we have a part in it. And even those parts that try to move away from that nature, always finds a way to come back to the source, to the origin, because it knows where its heart wants to be. It knows where it wants to explore, and it knows where it shines the most and what brings it joy. And through those joy, we truly hear the bells that open us up and allow us to find that world that is waiting and calling for us, if that makes any sense.
And your cat is illustrating this point.
Yes, very well. Adamant, I should say.
He's really wanting to make a bid for freedom over there.
Yes. It's about time. I should take them out soon. So in these moments here, I'd like to actually thank you because I don't want to keep you too long. I know an hours of your time is more than enough I could ask, but I could talk to you for days. And I think each of us coming together, our moments, our ability to continue, I think we both just had an experience here that I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for the messages you brought to me. It spoke to me, almost like universe speaking to me. And that's how I know you're in your heart space. You're honoring nature because you honor who you are. You honor your uniqueness to support it. You grow your garden. You allow it to blossom and become something that can fruit and share with community. And I think that's where we're changing the world. We're doing this because we will see, as we do this, you will see co-opted community gardens show up in the world. You will see the way people connect will honor and emit this same type of patterns because you're going to see it in the world. I got asked the other day how we have this dominant masculine structure. And I replied, at the same time, too, you can see it's present in the world because the homes we choose to live in have more straight lines and masculinity in them. And I think when we embrace a world of femininity, you will see the homes change. You will see the communities change. And just like us, it will change through us from the inside out.
Let us remember, though, that it is not about feminine being good and not so.
Balance.
We need both. We need both. It's really important that we have both because without masculine energy, there is no action.
Yes.
We need that. We need men who are continually being told that they are toxic to understand that they are not. And we need men to stand up and take responsibility for themselves, their families, and their world. But I think a lot of men are giving up and getting lost because they are continually being told that they are superfluous, unwanted, toxic. The level of what I would call venomous vitriol directed at men would be unacceptable in our culture towards women. And that's not to say that women aren't having a hard time of it either. There are issues around honoring the feminine in many, many different ways also. So what I'm saying here is both energies have been under stress and to a certain extent manipulated, corrupted, and vilified. And it is all part of divisive strategies. So we need men to be strong, and we need women to be strong, and we need the balance of masculine and feminine energy between us and within us. It's really important. So I just wanted to balance that out because we need masculine energy. Masculine energy, let's talk about embodiment, we need it.
It's strength.
But for the action, the energy to push forward, want to create this great new world, We need that masculine energy to move things forward. And we need the feminine energy for the balance of being able to stand back, let be, observe. One is very much about action. The other is very much about being passive and allowing. Both are equally important.
Yeah.
And yes.
Very spot on. And it's the biggest thing we have to understand, that these forces, they're present. We look at astrology because it shows us what they are as they are. And we communicate that because we can get in our own way many times. And we can also get distracted by what's in front of us. We have that fallibility. We can lose our path. But at the same time, too, we can also come together again. It's possible for universe to get back in tow. It's going a little out of sync, knowing you're out of sync, to resynchronize. And that's why synchronicity guides us. It provides us the stepping stones that can show us that when we have this within ourselves, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that should be lost. It's something that shows us there's this deeper nature present. It's a part of us. It's also external to us. And we honor and support that in many ways. We can see the overextension of these patterns, these expressions, but one cannot exist without the other. Together, they have to come, because then forth their potential not only is just not them meeting, but what births from those moments, what comes into being, offers generation that extends potential, extends the way of universes coming into itself. It allows expression of light because of the way that the light comes together. I come into the concept of when we arrive at Leo to shine this light, we already meet these energies. When we come in from Aries, where we're building this momentum to come into Taurus, it teaches us to bring us to form so that we can structure ourselves to have a mentality, to have our emotions, to find our light. And then when we find this light, we bring it together. We know what to carry forth. We know what counts. There, once we knowing what we have, we bring balance to know where we are, can move forward, can go into the external world, can go beyond us. So we go into the depth to change, to bring it through us. We come to learn and know so that we can structure it all as we connect and then bring it back to all that is, only for it to repeat all over again. It teaches us the lessons through most of the ways that are simply just nature expressing itself. And the way that we honor that is, like you said, specifically on its own. It's not by showing that we shouldn't have them. It's by embracing that we do. And embracing not only that we do, but we work with to understand, to communicate that language that doesn't need structure, that doesn't need restrictions, but that universalness of it, the way that we can bring ourselves to speak from the heart, takes us to use the tools we have as humans to process, to speak, to express, to function, to do. But it's also a responsibility to feel, to listen, to allow ourselves to come into being just as much as we're pushing out to be. It's a balancing act, but both are needed. It's the idea that a breath itself, you take it in, but you let it go. It is a union, but of each exchange is an exchange. So when you let go, universe is receiving. When you receive, universe is providing. It is a communication of forces. And in this, we find light itself coming to be through the spirit that carries it, through the essence of existence, through what we simply are just by being. And I think we're always going to come to that. Even if we see this digital nomad world coming together, this restriction to harness ourselves based off the tools we have, only bring us to reconceptualize how important it is for us to connect, how important it is to build what is in front of us. Because even when we build what we can with what we have, we're only getting closer to what we truly want and what we truly desire. Step by step, that force comes into being. But through that feminine, we're inspired, we're taken in the potential to know that we're going towards what our heart is speaking. It truly is a balance. And I love that we're able to express each through paths of psychology, through astrology, through exploration and curiosity, to connect this together. You through the feminine dominance in your being, me through the masculine dominance of my being, the way we chose to express. But inside both of that comes all the facets of also the masculine and feminine providing itself to be, as well as the expansions, the way we process all of it. It's so beautiful the way it dances. And I think universe coming together to show that offers up not only these forces to communicate with one another, but to communicate and find that middle ground, to find a new pathway, to innovate the way that before this, we did not have what we arrived with. And then after coming together, we share ideas, exchanges that offer us something new. That universe communicates with us in the same way so that we can ultimately deliver the message of universe, the word, the song, that is continuous, that's present. And most of the time we just have to listen. So I'd love to just have you bring closing words to this, because listening is ideally the best thing I should just leave it at, because the lessons that we can be taught from the feminine ultimately take us closer to home than just the connections the masculine can make. So I'll allow you to have the floor, and then we'll wrap it all up so you may continue your day.
I think that there is no better way to end than to say listening is everything. And we begin by listening to our hearts. We then listen to others. So it's that whole thing about active listening, which means being very present when we're listening. And then we listen to everything, because everything speaks to us. And whether we call it God or the universe is immaterial. The Creator speaks to us through everything that happens. So if we pay attention, i.e., listen, life will be magical and infinitely richer.
Well stated. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your wisdom, your experience, the way you express yourself. You're of the moment in the moment. And my moments with you, I'd like to just express that it's so pure, it's so honest, it's so heartful that you not only exist as a healer, but you exist in a way that you're working with the energies to not only process it, but work with it, to understand it, to know more, to navigate it, because it helps you to honor your nature. And I think that's something that's truly beautifully expressed, even without knowing one's chart. I witness it. And I think, like you said, through listening, present, active listening, do we get to take in and actually honor and appreciate what is always in front of us, what is always there and available to us. So I think your lessons today, I believe, have taught me, definitely, without a doubt. And I hope that those that are synchronously drawn to this message in this moment, even actively just here by chance, to take these words, take part of it, and carry it within themselves, the universe speaking to them, through us, through each of us together. And it truly is what the quote that comes to mind is, nature speaks to those who listen. And it couldn't agree more. It is truly beautiful. So thank you again, Ana Isabel. Please go ahead, share your website. You have your 3 podcasts. I love people to tune in. You post them on YouTube, and they're about half-hour segments. I always recommend them to individuals, always sharing them, because they give you just amount of time. It's like a cup of tea, just enough time to take in something to enlighten you and carry on with your day. And it's so wonderful. I love that. So please go ahead and share with everyone where they can find you and where they can tune in to see the light you bring to the world.
So the podcasts are all on YouTube. I suppose they're not really podcasts, but they are on YouTube. And they are, first one is called In the Light, Growing Your Soul. The second one is on the channel called Life Astrologer, all one word. That's Life Astrologer, all one word. And the third one is called Pet Talk with Anna and Teddy. And you might want to remember that my name is spelled Ana, for that. And Teddy is TEDD and then Y. And so I hope you enjoy them. My website is lifeastrologer.com or lifehypnosis.net. So lifeastrologer.com and lifehypnosis.net. Thank you very much, Eric, for the opportunity to have. Well, do you know what the conversations are about? Is moments of reflection. So thank you.
Yes.
Of reflection that you've offered me today.
That's certainly the energy in place. The more I become aware of it, the more I can't help but see it. And I completely agree with you. Even the awareness of being in the body, you look at the universe and you can see in yourself, it's okay to be human because we're getting there. And at the same time, too, I honor that we can have those moments of reflections because it helps us to see who we are. And that's why we have so much uniqueness in the world. So we can get closer to the nature that we admit to be. And I think even if we discover the way along the way, I think it's going to guide us more than ever, even by the little chances we take to let universe do its whatever it does, I suppose. So thank you again. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I'd love to thank everyone for tuning in as well as the moment just for being. So continue to stay true. And as always, listen to your heart, listen to your universe, and definitely active listen because, like you said, there's so much to reflect upon, and it can show us a closer source to light than what we had before. And when we realize that's always inside of us, it will change the world. So thank you, everyone, and may you continue to find your heart and bring it out into being. So thank you, and enjoy.